Hi, I'm Wyatt Metz. I'm 11 years old, and I'm from Wyoming, Ohio. Watch my grandfather's OhioRAAM show.
Do you watch the OhioRAAM show?
No.
Do your parents watch the OhioRAAM show?
No.
Why not?
It's boring.
You know, it's really nice when you get a lot of loyalty and support for what you're doing from your family. As you can see, I do. I'm thinking of Rodney Dangerfield, who said, "I don't get no respect." Well, I do get respect from the OhioRAAM show, and from all of those of you who watch a show about cycling and ultra-cycling. Hello again after a summer break. I'm Lee Kreider, the host of this show, and we're now entering our 5th season. We want to thank the people who keep me enthused and going, and that's the wonderful people who operate the Race Across America time stations, 41 at Oxford, Ohio, and 42 at Blanchester, Ohio. Today's show, we're going to go over to England. We're going to do something a little different. I've kind of turned the show over to a co-host, and you will know I co-host. It's Sue Pillinger in St. Albans, England, and she's going to interview Penny Barker, who is in Reading, England. Penny completed the Race Across the West this year, and she is scheduled to do the Race Across America in 2017. Penny is a veterinarian, and I believe, I may be mistaken, but I believe I may hear some dogs barking in the background at one point. I don't think it was my dog. We'll see. See what you think. As always in the internet, there's a little discrepancies in syncing sound and audio. They come by two different paths. One goes by Iceland and the other one goes by Argentina, and they don't always arrive back at the same time. That's one of the things that happens. So let's just get on with the show. Go right on to England and with Sue Pillinger. I guess you're in St. Albans, aren't you, Sue?
I am, yes. Sat comfortably on my sofa.
Okay, very good. Sue, before we get to our guest, Penny Barker, I want to just get you, you are the only woman who has finished the Race Across America, correct? Woman from United Kingdom.
That's right. Although I've had several people slip up with the only woman to complete RAM as well in previous interviews, which I have to correct, because actually I'm the 37th woman to complete RAM. But yes, the first British woman to officially complete the Race Across America.
What have you been about since then, Sue?
To be honest, it took quite a lot to finish the Race Across America. I imagine that's no surprise to anybody. And I have taken a bit of time out since then. I guess for normal people, my time out isn't really what they would expect. You know, spending a bit of time on the beach. I've done a couple of Ironmans and continued my long commutes to work and other exciting activities. I took part in a swim run, which is like a triathlon but without the biking, interestingly. So that was a bit of a change. But yeah, ready to jump back on the RAM bandwagon here. I'm hoping to be back out in America next year as a crew chief.
Okay, are you prepared to reveal who you will be chiefing for?
I believe it is public knowledge, but I will be crewing for Brian and Stacey Welsh, who are going to be attempting to cross America on a tandem.
Well, then, Sue, one more thing before we get on to Penny. There was something about your taking a role in the Ultra Marathon Cycling Association. What's that all about?
Well, I've been on the board of directors for probably nearly a year now, and in that time, I've been trying to help out the webmaster with various activities to do with the website and the social media side for the UMCA. Mark Newsom has actually now stepped down as the webmaster, so I have been handed the reins. So So yeah, taking on some pretty exciting projects there.
It's an interesting task to take over working on a web design that someone else has developed, I would imagine.
Yes, it's very challenging. I mean, Mark has built this website over probably 10 years, and it's a very custom built website. It has some very complicated code in it, which works out all the leaderboards of all the challenges for the Ultra Cup series. So yeah, trying to find a way of making it a little bit maintainable for everybody, so it's not just the job for one person. That's kind of the aim.
I have designated you co-host to introduce your friend and fellow country person and fellow ultra cyclist, Penny Barker, who we heard a little bit about. So you just take over, and we're going to put Penny's picture up here and let you fire away.
Hey Penny, it's great to see you again. Penny and I have actually we've only met once when I gave a talk in London, and Penny came along to introduce herself to me, and then I was able to follow her her raw attempt this summer. Yes, and it's so exciting watching a fellow Brit take on a race and actually being a dot watcher. And you know, all us British guys here were right behind you, Penny. It was really cool to watch. So I guess the RAM fans know that you did Raw, and you're a Raw finisher. Why RAM?
So probably about 5-6 years ago, I saw a documentary. I was recovering from some hip surgery at the time, and I saw a Channel 4 documentary. I didn't even see the start of it. It wasn't something I intended to watch, about Race Across America, and I was just mesmerised by it, absolutely. And it was one of those where I then sort of immediately kind of went on Google, was like, exactly what is this I'm watching? And I just really sort of thought, hang on, that actually sounds really cool. It's something I'd like to do. And then you sort of look at the enormity of it and think, yeah, okay, I need to just park that a little bit. And it's just niggled at the back of my mind for a few years. And I sort of set this little target aside, you know, something I want to do before I'm 40, and then realised that day is fast approaching. So it was about time that I actually sort of got off my butt and did something about it. And so I sort of, this was, you know, kind of a couple of years later, so I sort of set myself a 3-year journey, because obviously, I mean, you know, what a massive, particularly I think for those of us that live on this side of the pond, or, you know, sort of further away, it's a massive logistical undertaking. So, you know, I decided that I needed to actually just sort of set myself a bit of a journey to get there, to, you know, really sort of take on the enormity of the training and the logistics. But for me, it just, I think just the magnitude of the challenge. I like the idea, apart from just seeing, you know, a massive part of a country that I've never, you know, really visited in that kind of detail, just from a completely different way. Really pushing myself physically and mentally. I've some experience sort of previously. I was in the Territorial Army, so I've, you know, some experience of sort of pushing myself in sort of sleep deprivation and those, and you start stripping yourself away and really sort of seeing that whole kind of character building, you know, side of life. And it just really, it just struck me as an enormous adventure.
Can you tell us a bit about what you've planned for this journey? So RAM is the end goal, and your 3 years have, what events have you done to build up to this 3 years, and what are you planning to do between now and RAM next year?
So I started off, I sort of set myself 2 main kind of attempts at qualifying, because obviously qualification is valid for 2 years, so I sort of wanted to give myself ideally a couple of shots at that in case I didn't make it the first time. So my first big goal was race around Ireland last year. The idea being that it was a bit closer to home, so without the massive sort of investment of taking a crew to the States, it would be a good, it's a long race, it's a challenging race, as you know, as you well know, you know, but it's challenging in a slightly different way to, you know, to Raw. And then Raw was going to be the sort of either a second chance qualifier or just a way of getting the perfect experience on exactly the same course for the first 900 odd miles. So at that time, I mean, I was quite happy doing century rides, sort of before I started doing Race Around Ireland. So for me, it was then about kind of ramping up. I did an event called the Etap Extreme, which was a 220-mile ride around Snowdon. We sort of had an 18-hour cut-off, and that was quite brutal. That was sort of my first big sort of step up to something really over a century, that really kind of pushed me. Ireland, unfortunately, it was a fantastic learning experience, but I got pretty much halfway around. I think I got about a mile over halfway, and my neck had unfortunately decided that it wasn't going to play the game anymore. So I unfortunately succumbed to Schirmer's neck, and I wasn't able to complete the Race Around Ireland, but it was a fantastic experience, apart from just actually being an awesome race, and very well organised and beautiful location. We learnt so much in those sort of 3 days that we'd never have learned if I'd have gone for a shorter qualifier. So that was sort of a useful learning point, and as much as anything, I learned the fact that I needed to look after my neck. So after that, the next step was raw, and obviously then it was a little bit of kind of putting all my eggs in one kind of qualification basket. So this basically between now and next year, I had penciled in Revolve 24, which is in a couple of weeks' time. I've actually taken a step back and decided not to do that, not because I've qualified, but actually because I've made massive changes to my nutrition strategy. We can maybe talk about that later, but I've kind of embraced the whole low carb sort of keto adaptation side of things, and it's just not the right time to be doing a 24-hour race. So I'm going to let that bed in a little bit, and then do probably have a couple of sort of training camps, and then think about maybe I might do another actual event, or it might just be all about sort of hardcore training blocks between now and Raw. But definitely then some time acclimatizing both to the desert and also to the altitude, which is something I suffer from a little bit with Raw.
It sounds like
a
very, very well thought out plan of how to get to RAM. You obviously have skills in that area. I know that you have a very varied background, which I think you should share with the viewers, about what you actually do for a job, and also perhaps some of your career changes that have happened during the build up to your current position that you have.
Yeah, so I was in terms of sort of the organisational strategy, I was going to say that's what happens when you get a project manager, as I'm sure you sort of know, when you get a project manager organising a RAM attempt. So I am at the moment by profession, or I suppose at the moment I have been since graduation, a vet by profession. So day to day, that is what I do at the moment. It's what I started off doing when I left university. So I had a degree in veterinary medicine and one also in human orthopedics, ironically. But I actually took some time out. In total, I took 9 years out after doing a small animal internship, and decided to try and see what other things that potentially my skills lent themselves to. I knew what being a vet looked like for the rest of my for the rest of my life, and had a sudden kind of wobble that said, is this really what I want to do until I'm 55, 60? I'd been in the Territorial Army, or the Officer Training Corps, when I was at university, and sort of thought, well, actually I've got sort of skills effectively in kind of problem solving. I like working with people. I like working in sort of challenging environments. So where can that take me? So I spent some time working as a project manager for a Swedish firm who were putting radiology systems into the NHS. Ended up running a massive program, £20 million program for them, which was incredibly challenging and totally different to anything I ever did as a vet. And you understand the different sides of stress. For me now, stress is about an animal literally trying to die in front of you when you don't know what's wrong with it, and you don't know how to fix it. But there's a completely different type of stress, which is all to do with budgets and timelines and that sort of pressure. So for me, that was very, very different. I went from there and worked as a management consultant for Ernst & Young for 2 years in their IT advisory sector, which again was very, very different. I got to work in a lot of really interesting projects for them, lots of different sectors. So I worked in defence. I worked down in Whitehall with the Department of Energy and Climate Change on the smart metering programme. I worked in an NHS Foundation Trust and IT restructure. So really sort of varied couple of years, and then sort of began just to sort of wonder whether I was quite fulfilled doing what I was doing, and realised that the answer to that question was probably not. You know, I was earning a good salary. I was, you know, quite happy to get up and go to work every day, but not. There was just something missing, and it was just that little bit of sense of fulfilment. So decided to take a little bit of a leap of faith and go back to the job that I'd started with. And so I've been back vetting now. This is year 3, I think, and that again was a leap of faith. You know, just to sort of, you wonder whether actually all the skills that you started with, because 9 years is a long time, and I was very lucky to get a job.
Just a question on being a vet and relating it back to RAM. I know when I was doing my RAM, I actually surprised my crew when I stopped very suddenly at one point in Kansas, because a small tortoise had wandered onto the road, and I stopped to pick him up. So a couple of questions. Are you prepared for having to deal with animals on your race? And secondly, are you prepared for perhaps a visitation by Lee in Ohio, and he may bring Brewski along for some sort of treatment? And have you allowed for that in your plan?
Oh, you see, maybe I should do. I'm not entirely sure, but possibly towards the latter end of RAM that my brain will be in quite the suitable place. But I actually worried my crew runner on the race around Ireland. We were just approaching Mellon Head, and I suddenly stopped very abruptly, and they thought I got a puncture, and actually I got a little bumblebee who'd got stuck on my bike. And I wanted to see him to safety, because I'm a big fan of bees. They do a lot of hard work for us. And the guys were like, "Why have you stopped?" I'm sorry, I just need to sort the bee out. So, yes, I have been known to nearly sort of cycle into hedges by worrying about the sheep and things, and cows on the side of the road.
Been there, done the same.
Penny, Brewski, as Shu knows, is our dog here, which we you know, we are. Somebody says he's thinks he's a people. No, he thinks we're dogs. I think that's the way it works. But he loves his vet, and I told him we were having a vet on today, and I thought maybe he'd come in to make an appearance, but I think he's out somewhere else at the moment.
Yeah, some dogs hear the word vets and run a mile.
Maybe that's useful though. In RAM, you want to be able to do that, because you will experience wild dogs and dogs running out onto the road during the race. And also imaginary dogs was one of the hallucinations I had. So the ability to shout sick at an appropriate moment might be good there.
Maybe I should just carry my stethoscope and a thermometer and just ward them off.
Brilliant. I love it. I think you should. So I've got a few questions about moving from your experience of RAW to RAM. So having completed RAW, what was the biggest thing that you learnt that is going to help you for RAM? And also, what are your fears and maybe the biggest unknowns that you're scared about in moving up to RAM?
So I learned the same lesson in RAW that I learned in Ireland. I just didn't realise that I needed to learn it. So I learned that my nutrition strategy doesn't work, and I need to sort that out. I learned that the altitude challenge actually happens at a lower altitude than I'd thought. And that, I think, is both the biggest lesson and the thing that scares me the most. I think there are a lot of things that you can do in life that kind of, or, you know, in terms of sort of, you know, kind of ultra sport, where you're pushing your body, and you can manage a lot of that risk. But I think the climate and the effect that has on physiologically on us You know, particularly stuff like altitude, it affects different people in different ways. It might affect you one year and not another. It has a different effect depending on whether you're hydrated, all those sorts of things. So I think it's that kind of unknown, and particularly just because RAM is such a massive investment. If you could say to yourself, well, actually, you know, barring physical injury or accident, you know, and it just coming down to sheer force of will, I will finish this. You know, I think it's the being dealt the slightly physiological curveball that, you know, comes to races like pulmonary edema, those sorts of things. They worry me. And actually, it being slightly out of my control, you know, you can put as much contingency in place, you can manage the risk, and I'm so pleased that I with all of these things, I'm really pleased that I actually experienced the issues, because now I know I need to deal with them. I'd sort of thought, okay, Wolf Creek Pass, you know, altitude, you know, that's going to be an issue, but actually for me, going up that stage, I think it was probably proving a little bit of an issue going up to Flagstaff. I just didn't realise it. I thought it was more just the heat, but I think actually altitude was playing a little bit of a part. But certainly that last stage on the climb up, before you then drop down into Durango, I couldn't breathe. It was ridiculous. My lips were going blue, and I was, you know, panting as if I'd run a marathon, and I was barely turning the pedals, and it was alarming. But I'm pleased that I had it. Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't. It was like the whole Sherman's neck thing. If I hadn't had it, I wouldn't realise. I'd packed a neck brace. I'd thought, yeah, okay, Sherman's neck. It's one of those things. I'll deal with it. You know, we can. That will affect me later on. You know, all of these things happen a lot sooner than you think. Was my biggest lesson.
Penny, I want to ask you a question. I remember when Shu finished RAM. She said something to the effect that she had set the bar for British women low enough so it could be beaten by someone. And I think I'm quoting you more or less accurately there. Is that your goal, Penny, to beat Shu's time?
So the answer in that sense is yes, but simply because I think, you know, you have to. My goal would be to do it in under 12 days, simply because I think it's that whole thing where you need to build in contingency. If you set to complete it in the time that as much time as you've got, you then run the risk of falling short. So I think I've set my team the target to try and get me to basically, for my finish time, for my finish average speed for raw was 10.3 miles an hour. I've actually set us the goal of going 2 miles an hour faster than that. Whether that is achievable in that sense of the word is remains to be seen. But it's about finding little bits from everywhere. It would be lovely to beat Shu's time, but I'm attempting to beat it solely on the basis that actually I need to allow time to do so. My goal really is to finish it. You know, it doesn't. The time matters. You know, in some cases, if you're racing it, but actually, you're a RAM finisher unless you win RAM. For me, it's actually just about completing it and enjoying the experience. That's what I'm trying to come away with. I am in no, I certainly don't. It was rather like standing on the start line of Race Around Ireland last year with Danny Genovese, or indeed on the start line with Sarah Cooper this year at Raw. I know my place. So I'm just going out there to finish it and to enjoy it and to give my crew an awesome experience as well that they'll never forget.
Penny, you have a couple of charities. I'd like you to tell us a little about the charities you're writing for.
So I'm writing for two charities, the British Heart Foundation and Hounds for Heroes. So the British Heart Foundation, I chose them. Slightly sad reason, really. My husband and long term, I've known Pete since pretty much as long as I've known Kyle. So he died suddenly of a heart attack a couple of years ago, age 40, left behind a wife and several children. And it was a real sort of stark reminder that heart disease doesn't always come with a warning. And there is a lot that we can do to prevent it, to treat it, to understand more about it. And to spread the messages about about actually how to look after your heart. And it's something that I I really sort of believe in, both in the sense that we owe it to ourselves and to our loved ones to try and do what we can to look after our health, but also as for, a lot of the research that British Heart Foundation does is also about diseases like cardiomyopathy, which don't manifest themselves until a perfectly healthy person is doing something like running a marathon, or doing the Prudential Ride London, and suddenly drops dead of a heart attack. So sometimes it's actually, unfortunately, a disease that we don't even know that we've got. So I'm raising money for the BHF, particularly in memory of Pete, and some other family members that we've and friends who we've lost or very nearly lost to heart disease. And the other charity I'm writing for is a charity that I am a trustee for, which is Hounds for Heroes. So they provide assistance dogs to wounded servicemen and women, both from the armed forces and from the civilian emergency services, so police, ambulance staff, fire and rescue. And they're a very small charity, and they are doing an amazing job. And I took on being a trustee for them back in January. I was asked, having obviously raised some money for them, I went down, and they approached me to become their veterinary trustee, which was just an absolute honour, because one of the things that I am really sort of passionate about this whole sort of journey to RAM and hopefully onwards is that it's not just about the bike, it's not just about the cycling. I want this to be something more than a sum of its parts. I want there to be a legacy at the end of it, and so being able to do more work for Hounds for Heroes was fantastic. So they've partnered. I was actually down at a meeting with them today, and we were sort of talking. We've partnered 9 dogs over the last, I think it's 3 years, and that's 9 dogs that are really making a difference to to the lives of people who've had suffered life-changing injuries, many of them with post-traumatic stress disorder. We've got some other dogs in training. We've got great plans for for expanding our the puppies that we've got sort of coming through, and it's really starting to take off as a as a charity. So I'm really privileged to be involved with this, and actually it's all I would say is kind of watch this space as far as that's concerned, because it's something that I'm dedicating more of my time to. And in terms of kind of career portfolio, it might just be about to take another little step.
Penny, we will have on the website just below where the video appears, people will find links to both the British Heart Foundation and to Hounds for Heroes, links to that, as well as links to your website and other things there that people can click on if they were interested in learning more. You wouldn't object to people leaving a little donation when they're there, would you?
No, that would work very well for us all.
I know I'm certainly going to sponsor you. I love the Hounds for Heroes, and I know I'm going to speak for my mum here as well. It's one of her charities that she would like to support as well. We have a dog at home who likes to help out.
I mean, what those dogs can do is incredible. Alan Parson, who's the founder essentially. I don't know if you've read his book Endel, but the story itself makes you weep. But you only have to meet his current dogs, EJ and Rookie, and who I sort of see regularly when I go down to the centre. What those dogs can do is incredible. I was up talking to one of our clients' families a couple of weeks ago, and it was just brought tears to my eyes just hearing what a difference the dogs made to their daughter's life. So it's.
Shu, before we round this up, you got any more questions of Penny?
Well, I think just a quick one. You did allude to it earlier, and I know people are really interested in this, which is the diet. why you're attempting this type of diet change, and how it's going so far, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, to cut a long story short, I suffered GI issues on both Raw and Race Around Ireland, and I had gone on kind of longer rides, basically anything sort of over 10-12 hours. My guts start playing up, I sort of tried actually sort of tweaking my diet in general and tweaking my nutrition strategy, and after Raw, where it just played such havoc with my average speed, as not to mention my morale and that of my crew, I decided I really need to sort of have a look at it. And I read a book called The Real Meal Revolution by Prof. Tim Noakes, or Dr. Tim Noakes, and the overriding message there was actually about the fact that we don't need carbohydrates in our diet, and actually, ancestrally, evolutionary wise, we've come from a background of eating essentially a low carb, high fat diet, although eating carbs has obviously massively helped our development because it speeded up our, the development of our brain, etc. And it was something I'd heard. I read the book before I did Raw and dismissed it slightly. I understood all of the science, and I get all of the science. That the vet in me absolutely understands that. But my brain just went, yep, I'm an athlete. I need carbs, and that can't apply. And after Raw, I was forced to sit down and sort of revisit it. And I read another book called What's the Fat? Sports Performance by a chap called Grant Schofield and his team. And that particular book, along with another book that I read called The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Sports Performance, really set out a bit of a blueprint, as well as actually going into the science in more detail, set out a bit of a blueprint as to actually how it potentially would work for me as an athlete. And so what essentially you are doing is trying to switch your body back from burning carbs as primary fuel to burning fat. So to do this, you effectively need to flip a metabolic switch. So our bodies are perfectly capable of burning fat. It's just not something we do preferentially. Carbs are much more readily available. But unfortunately, burning carbs comes at a price. GI issues being, sort of potentially one of them. But also, actually, we have a much larger fat pool. So even somebody with 10% body fat has about 40,000 calories sitting there in their body, ready and waiting to be burned. Whereas you can only store about 2,000 calories worth of fat. So in terms of thinking about what sort of tank I would like to use for an endurance event, obviously the sort of the fat burning tank would be lovely, but in order to access it, you need to teach your body to go back to that. So you have to put yourself through a process called nutritional ketosis, which means heavily restricting carb intake. So we're talking down to like 20-30 grams of carbs a day. Which is pretty extreme, and it meant explaining what a carb is to a lot of my friends and colleagues, because it's amazing where carbs live, is all I have to say. So for me, one of the sort of the biggest changes, I was vegetarian for 3 years, and to do this, I've pretty much had to make the decision, at least in the short term, that I'm going to go back to eating meat, because it's too hard a diet to follow very well if you're veggie or vegan, just simply because of kind of getting a balanced diet. So I'm in week 6 now, and I'm actually feeling pretty good. So the first few weeks were a little bit rough. I think some of that was probably because I was also off the back of Raw, and my body was just trying to recover. And then I was taking away its no nutrition source and saying, no, burn these things called ketones. Don't burn glucose. And my body was going, but I don't know how to. So that was quite hard, and mentally it's also quite hard. I think I think like a carb fueled athlete. You feel that you need to be eating at all times. So for me, it's been quite liberating, interestingly, because I used to eat all the time. I was every couple of hours, and it was all healthy food. I didn't sort of stuff my face with cakes and pastries and all that sort of thing. I ate a very healthy, balanced, or so I thought, diet. But the guys at work used to joke about the fact that I was always eating, whereas now actually, I can get away with 3 meals a day and no snacking, or potentially 2 meals a day, if I'm doing some sort of fasting like I've done today. So actually, that in itself is quite liberating. I'm working
from my point of view. It's certainly going to be very interesting to see how this works, because I was following Juliana and her explanations of it as well. And as a vegan who eats a lot of carbs and probably only carbs, I found it fascinating. So I think it's definitely one thing to watch out for, and I know it's a very popular diet at the moment. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. And what was it? So I read Juliana's blog, and it was interesting because she did actually say that she had GI issues for the first part of the race, and I did think, okay, that's kind of the whole reason that I'm sort of avoiding them. But hopefully, that is all going to come down to practice and planning. I'm working with some guys from a company called Vesper, who make a product called Vesper, but they also do something called optimized fat metabolism, which uses carbs strategically. I mean, you put yourself through nutritional ketosis, and then it's about teaching your body to actually respond to carbs when you get it. So I won't be racing ultra low.
Penny, I was just peeking at your website while you were talking about your diet, and I have something here that I got somewhere in your bio where you talk about that. But I believe you have something on the website, do you not? Don't you have something?
Yeah, I put up a...
Okay, well, the website link will be also on the website, and the link's right below the video, so if people want to learn more about it, I'd highly recommend you go to Penny's website and see what she's there. She's got a lot of other interesting stuff about her, and you'll enjoy that. Hey, listen, it's time we wound this thing down. Shu, thank you a lot for doing this. It was kind of pleasant to kind of sit back and let somebody else do the work. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. May I just add one little message? To, obviously wish Penny good luck, and I will see her out in America next year. But just there are 3 British records to go for here. There's obviously first British woman. There's fastest British woman, and there's most royal British woman. And I think Penny and I probably have to discount one of those. We know that there has been a royal who has finished RAAM before both of us. So Penny, you're going to have to go for that fastest British woman.
Shu,
I'll try and do one for the team.
I was going to bring Royal into this discussion because I know you have some feelings along those lines. But hey, listen, Penny, thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate that, and we wish you well, and we'll be following you very closely, and hopefully we'll be able to catch you when you get down in our neighborhood here in Ohio. And Shu, it's always good to see you. I was going to have my little key ring to show you. I keep it in the car. It's my spare, and I appreciate that as well.
That was a hint, Penny. Don't forget a gift for Lee when you get to Ohio.
As I told Shu, people say I'm prejudiced for certain people. A T-shirt, a key ring, anything I can be bought off cheaply.
I will remember that.
So, well, listen.
I'll bring something for Brewski as well.
Yeah. Just as long as it's edible, he'll love that. Hey, listen. Thanks everybody for being here, and we wish everybody well. We'll be seeing you, hopefully, and hope you'll be doing very well and have a very successful RAAM, Penny, and Shu. We hope that you have an enjoyable experience as a crew chief as well. Thanks, ladies, for taking time to be with us. Thanks, Shu, a lot for her hosting. That was quite fun. I may try something like that again sometime. I might appeal to some of you to do that job. If you want to learn more about Penny and if you want to learn more about charities she supports, just go to OhioRAAMshow.com, look up show number 127, and below the video you'll see links to her charities, to her Facebook page, and other things. Thank you for watching. Thank you for support. Thank you for who give us likes, who give us comments, and particularly those of you who give us shares on the social media. You help spread the word of the great sport of ultra cycling, known so little but has given so much to so many. Thank you again, and we'll see you in about 10 days.
Music